Have you ever stared at a person in the corner office, or in the highest office in the land, and a single baffling question burned in your mind? How in the world did they get there? You're not alone. We've all seen it happen. The person who seems utterly out of their depth, somehow ascending to a position of immense power, while brilliant and capable people are left standing in their shadow. Think of the legends of history, like Emperor Nero, supposedly strumming his lyre as Rome was engulfed in flames. Or picture modern-day titans like Elizabeth Holmes, who conjured a multi-billion-dollar empire from technology that was pure fiction. It's a pattern so persistent it feels less like an accident and more like a hidden rule of the game. But what if it is? What if there's a dark, twisted logic explaining why the least qualified so often sees the most influence? Unlocking paradoxes like this is exactly what we do here at Philosophy Bite. If you believe that understanding these hidden rules is the first step to mastering them, take a moment to subscribe and become part of the conversation. Today, we descend into the world of one of history's most notorious political masterminds, Niccolò Machiavelli, to unlock his brutal secrets about why incompetence and power are such frequent allies. But this is far more than a history lesson. This is a journey into a psychological phenomenon that is actively shaping our world right now, from corporate boardrooms to our own governments. The uncomfortable truth is that sometimes being intelligent is the very thing that holds you back. Understanding this paradox is the key to spotting the manipulators in our midst, and perhaps even to navigating your own path to the top. The Machiavellian paradox. In 16th century Florence, a man named Niccolò Machiavelli, exiled from the political arena he adored, put pen to paper and created one of the most feared and misunderstood books in history, The Prince. Unlike the hopeful philosophers who came before him, Machiavelli wasn't interested in sketching out a utopia. He was interested in power, raw, real, and how it truly operates in the messy world we all inhabit. He wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." This single sentence is the skeleton key to his entire philosophy. Machiavelli knew that in the theater of power, the mask you wear is often more important than the face beneath. And right here, we find the first clue to our puzzle. Appearing capable can be a more potent weapon than actually being capable. Machiavelli noticed that leaders who were genuinely brilliant often created their own downfall. Why? Because true intelligence rarely travels alone. It brings along baggage that can become a fatal liability in a ruthless power struggle. Things like seeing nuance, wrestling with ethical dilemmas, and a healthy dose of self-doubt. Imagine a truly smart person entering a high-stakes environment. They see the world in shades of gray, while others demand black and white. They admit to limitations while others make grandiose, sweeping promises. They question their own judgment while others project an unshakable, godlike confidence. In any arena where bold declarations are valued more than thoughtful consideration, these intellectual virtues become crippling handicaps. Think of the stark contrast between a figure like Socrates, who questioned everything and was rewarded with a death sentence by Athenian democracy, and the countless populist leaders who have surfed to power on waves of simple, absolute certainty. Socrates' famous declaration, "I know that I know nothing," made him a philosophical icon, but a political dead man walking. Meanwhile, legions of leaders have triumphed by claiming they, and they alone, possess all the answers. Disturbingly, modern science backs this up. A controversial 2017 study in the Journal of Management dropped a bombshell. It suggested that intelligence is only a positive for leadership up to an IQ of around 120. Beyond that point, being too smart actually started to hinder a person's rise to leadership. The researchers theorized that exceptionally intelligent people simply can't connect with or persuade those who can't keep up with their complex thoughts. Whether you fully accept that study or not, it forces us to ask a difficult question. What kind of intelligence truly helps someone win? But raw intellect isn't the only piece of this puzzle. If brilliance can be a liability, what traits actually propel people up the ladder of power? This leads us to a psychological glitch that explains why we so often fall for the wrong person. The Dunning-Kruger Effect. The confidence trick. Have you ever been in a meeting where the loudest, most confident person in the room slowly but surely becomes the most influential, even if their ideas are complete nonsense? This isn't a coincidence. It's a deep-seated feature of our psychology. In the 1990s, psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger gave a name to this phenomenon: the Dunning-Kruger Effect. It's a cognitive bias where people with very little skill in a specific area dramatically overestimate their own ability, while true experts, painfully aware of how much they still don't know, tend to underestimate theirs. As Shakespeare wrote centuries earlier, "The fool doth think he is wise, but the wise man knows himself to be a fool." Machiavelli would have instantly recognized this as a fundamental law of power. Modern research has repeatedly shown this bias at work in leadership. A 2020 study in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that individuals who projected overconfidence were consistently seen as leaders by their peers, completely irrespective of their actual talent. The illusion of certainty was more powerful than proven skill. History is littered with examples. Think of General George Armstrong Custer, whose supreme, unshakable confidence led his men into a catastrophic military disaster. Yet that same confidence had earned him lightning-fast promotions and a legion of devoted followers. Or look at the modern tech world, where visionary founders who speak in absolute world-changing terms often vacuum up billions in funding, leaving more cautious, experienced entrepreneurs in the dust. WeWork's Adam Neumann is a classic example. Despite a business model built on sand, his messianic confidence convinced investors to pour billions into his vision. This pattern is global. In Japan, Masayoshi, son of SoftBank, lost a staggering $70 billion on disastrous bets, yet maintained his investors' trust through the sheer force of his personality. In Russia, the oligarchs didn't rise through managerial genius, but through connections and swagger during the chaotic post-Soviet era. Singapore, in stark contrast, has intentionally designed its leadership selection process with safeguards to prevent this very thing. To stop confidence from ever trumping competence. In 2012, researchers from Stanford and the University of Houston made a chilling discovery. In newly formed groups, the single greatest predictor of who would become leader wasn't competence, intelligence, or experience. It was narcissism. The groups led by narcissists didn't perform any better, but they believed they did. Why does this glitch exist in our mental software? Our brains evolved to use shortcuts to survive. When we evaluate others, confidence acts as a signal for competence. Decisiveness looks like clarity. These shortcuts worked well enough on the savannah, but in our complex modern world, they're dangerously unreliable, because true expertise often requires admitting uncertainty. This confidence illusion explains the initial ascent of the incompetent. But there's another, more sinister mechanism that helps them dig in and solidify their power. The network effect, the incompetence engine. Machiavelli observed a crucial, self-perpetuating cycle within power structures. Incompetent leaders have a strong tendency to surround themselves with people who are even less competent. In The Prince, he delivered a cold, hard truth. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. What Machiavelli saw was a survival mechanism. Weak leaders are terrified of being exposed or outshone, so they deliberately hire subordinates who pose no threat. This creates a cascade of mediocrity, a virus that can infect and cripple an entire organization. Dr. Thomas Chamorro Premuzic, a renowned organizational psychologist, calls this phenomenon competence phobia. Insecure leaders feel instinctively threatened by talented team members who might reveal their shortcomings or, worse, one day take their job. So they don't hire for skill. They hire for loyalty, flattery, and a comforting lack of ambition. Think of it as a competence drought spreading outwards from the person at the top. In the court of the Roman Emperor Commodus, brilliant administrators were systematically pushed out and replaced by sycophants and entertainers, a move that dramatically accelerated Rome's decline. In modern Brazil, the political system known as the Centro institutionalizes this very dynamic, with powerful positions filled not by merit, but by personal connections and loyalty. In nations like Zimbabwe under the later rule of Robert Mugabe, the systematic replacement of skilled civil servants with party loyalists had devastating economic consequences. This process creates what scientists call homophily, the magnetic pull that draws similar people together. In the halls of power, this means incompetent leaders build islands of incompetence around themselves, insulating their reign from sharp questions, conflicting data, and constructive criticism. Ask yourself, have you ever worked somewhere where asking tough questions was seen as being difficult? Where raising a valid concern got you branded as not a team player? These are the symptoms of this network effect in action. And yet, even when we see these patterns, we still find ourselves strangely drawn to the leaders who offer the easy way out. This deep-seated vulnerability explains why incompetence doesn't just survive, it thrives. Cognitive closure, the seduction of simplicity. Why, when faced with a complex world, do we so often choose the leader who offers the simplest, most black and white answers? The reason lies deep in our cognitive architecture and our fundamental desperate need for certainty. True expertise is almost always messy. Real experts understand the fuzzy edges of their knowledge. They see the intricate web of cause and effect. They talk in probabilities and trade-offs. But these intellectual virtues are deeply unsatisfying to our psychological cravings. As Machiavelli wrote, "For the great majority of mankind are satisfied with appearances as though they were realities, and are often more influenced by the things that seem than by those that are." He saw something elemental about us. We crave the comfort of a definite answer, even if that answer is a lie. Picture a moment of national crisis. People rarely flock to the leader who says, "This is a multifaceted problem with no easy solutions, which will require careful deliberation and painful compromises." Instead, their hearts are captured by the one who stands at the podium and declares, "I alone can fix it. The solution is simple." Look at how climate scientists talk about their field, with careful models, ranges of probability, and nuanced policy proposals. Then, compare that to how political figures often frame the issue, with absolute, unshakable certainty. The scientific approach is intellectually honest, but it stands little chance against the psychological comfort of a simple story. Or consider healthcare debates. Medical experts will describe a dizzying array of complex trade-offs inherent in any system. Politicians, in contrast, will offer a miracle cure that promises everything with no downside. Guess which message usually wins? In a particularly stunning 2017 experiment, Yale researchers uncovered something truly disturbing. When people were given complex mathematical problems related to policy, their ability to get the right answer was directly warped by whether the correct result aligned with their pre-existing political beliefs. Even more shocking, the participants with the strongest math skills were the most biased. They used their intelligence not to find the truth, but as a weapon to build a more sophisticated justification for the answer they already wanted to be true. Psychologists call this our need for cognitive closure, the desire to land on a definite answer and eliminate ambiguity. Studies show that when we feel threatened or uncertain, our need for this closure skyrockets. We become magnets for black and white thinking and are far more willing to follow authoritarian leaders who project absolute certainty. This creates a terrifying feedback loop. The more complex and frightening the world becomes, the more we hunger for simplistic thinking and the leaders who provide it. It's like a failure of our psychological immune system. At the very moment we need nuance the most, we become most allergic to it. Ask yourself honestly, have you ever felt drawn to an explanation precisely because it was neat and tidy, even if a part of you suspected reality was far messier? That's the seduction of simplicity at work in your own mind. But there's one final, even more troubling dimension to this puzzle. One that explains why intelligence alone is no defense against a manipulator. Moral considerations, the unethical advantage. Here we arrive at Machiavelli's most chilling insight. He argued that a strong moral compass in the brutal arena of power can be a fatal handicap. In perhaps his most infamous line, he wrote that a ruler who wants to survive must learn how not to be good, and to use this knowledge or not to use it according to necessity. While intelligent people often develop more sophisticated ethical frameworks, this can paradoxically hinder their ability to compete against those who are playing by a different set of rules. In any competition, the person willing to cross moral lines has access to a playbook. Their ethical rivals do not. They can make promises they never intend to keep. They can sabotage their rivals with lies. They can stoke fears and prejudices that others would never touch. Consider the clash between Cicero and Julius Caesar in ancient Rome. Cicero, the brilliant orator and defender of the Republic, was ultimately outmaneuvered and destroyed by Caesar, a man who had zero qualms about crossing the Rubicon, both literally and figuratively. Shattering the sacred norms his opponents felt bound to uphold. In our own time, we see principled candidates struggle against opponents willing to deploy a scorched earth campaign of deception and character assassination. In the corporate world, researchers at the University of British Columbia found that psychopathic traits, like a lack of empathy, were positively correlated with rapid promotion, especially when paired with superficial charm. This pattern cuts across cultures, from China's Xia Fa Guo Duan, the ruthless businesswoman archetype, to Nordic companies where, despite a cultural focus on collaboration, studies show that manipulative leaders often climb the ladder faster than their ethical peers. This creates what game theorists call a race to the bottom. When unethical tactics are seen to work, everyone else feels the pressure to adopt them or risk being left behind. Over time, This can poison an entire system, transforming unethical behavior from the exception into the norm. Understanding these dark patterns can feel demoralizing, but not all environments are the same. By understanding the conditions that allow incompetence to fester, we can begin to engineer systems that reward true merit instead. Different environments, the ecosystems of failure. Machiavelli knew that context is everything. Some environments naturally select for competence, while others are the perfect petri dish for incompetence to grow and spread. Several key factors determine the difference. First, feedback loops and accountability. In fields where the consequences of failure are swift, clear, and undeniable, competence tends to win out. Think of a surgeon. If their patients consistently die on the table, their incompetence is exposed. Think of a bridge engineer. If their structures crumble, the failure is catastrophic and obvious. But in environments where feedback is slow, vague, or easily spun, incompetence can survive for years, even decades. Political systems where blame can be shifted to a predecessor. Corporate hierarchies where bad results are hidden in complex financial reports, or media landscapes where entertainment value trumps factual accuracy. These are all fertile ground for the incompetent to flourish. Second, institutional design. Heavily centralized power systems with few checks and balances are breeding grounds for failure. The collapse of the Soviet Union was accelerated by a system that placed immense power in the hands of a few unaccountable individuals. Conversely, Germany's corporate governance model, which legally separates the management board from the supervisory board, provides a structural barrier against unchecked and incompetent leadership. Third, information asymmetry. When success is easy to measure and compare, merit has a better chance. But when the goals are vague or success is purely subjective, style will always beat substance. As Machiavelli so brilliantly put it, men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, because it belongs to everybody to see you, to few to come in touch with you. He knew that most of us judge the book by its cover, because actually reading and understanding the book is too difficult, especially in complex fields where only a few have true expertise. Fourth, economic incentives. Systems that shower rewards on short-term performance while ignoring long-term consequences are practically begging for superficially charming but fundamentally incompetent leaders. The 2008 financial crisis was a perfect storm of this, where incentive structures that rewarded immediate profits, no matter how risky, fostered a leadership culture that prioritized the appearance of success over genuine stability. Look at your own life and work. Which of these forces are at play? Understanding the structure of your environment is the first step toward navigating it successfully and recognizing when the system itself is rigged. But even in a well-designed system, an incompetent leader can still triumph by using a specific set of psychological weapons. Psychological tactics. The manipulator's playbook. Incompetent leaders don't hold on to power by sheer luck. They deploy a specific arsenal of psychological tactics, tactics Machiavelli would have recognized in a heartbeat, to solidify their position and neutralize any opposition. Play number 1. Ignite the tribe. By forging a powerful us versus them narrative, they transform any legitimate criticism of their performance into a perceived attack from a hateful enemy. This not only shields them from accountability, but also deepens their supporters' emotional loyalty. And psychologists call it identity fusion. A state where a follower's personal identity becomes inseparable from the leader's. Once that bond is forged, attacking the leader feels like a personal attack on the follower themselves. From cult leaders like Jim Jones to modern authoritarians, this tactic is universal. Play number 2. Drown them in noise. By constantly generating chaos, manufacturing crises, and sparking endless controversies, incompetent leaders deliberately overwhelm our ability to think. When you're frantically trying to process a constant stream of outrage, you have no mental bandwidth left for deep analysis or organized opposition. It's a strategy of cognitive exhaustion. Play number 3. Make truth meaningless. By constantly shifting their positions, denying things they've said, and rewriting history, they create a dizzying environment where objective truth begins to feel like a matter of opinion. This is what George Orwell famously called doublethink, the ability to hold two contradictory beliefs at once. When truth becomes subjective, accountability becomes impossible. As Machiavelli observed, the vulgar crowd always is taken by appearances, and the world consists chiefly of the vulgar. He wasn't being elitist. He was making a clinical observation about a vulnerability we all share. Play number 4. Weaponize fear. When people are struggling financially or feel that their future is uncertain, they become far more receptive to leaders who offer simple solutions and easy scapegoats. Across the globe, economic anxiety provides the fertile soil where incompetent leadership can grow, by offering blame instead of analysis and trading on fear instead of hope. Think about your own media consumption. How often do you find yourself chasing the latest firestorm instead of focusing on the deeper, more complex issues? That is the manipulator's playbook working on you. Recognizing these dark patterns is the first step. The next is to build our defenses. Awareness, forging our defenses. On an individual level, awareness is our primary armor. By understanding these hidden psychological forces, we can learn to resist them. This defense is built on 3 core practices. First, we must forge intellectual humility, the courage to admit the limits of our own knowledge. Research consistently shows that people who embrace the power of "I don't know" are far better at judging ideas on their merit, not on the confidence of the person speaking. Think of it as your cognitive immune system, protecting you from the infection of false certainty. Second, we need to go on an information diet. This is about developing true media literacy, the skill of telling spectacle from substance. It means mindfully choosing your sources, constantly questioning how information is framed, and ruthlessly filtering for quality over quantity. As Warren Buffett said, really successful people say no to almost everything. Apply that to information. Reject the noise. Seek the signal. Third, we must embrace philosophical reflection. This is the ancient practice of stepping back from the daily chaos to examine the deeper principles at play. The Stoics recommended this as a daily guard against emotional impulse. As the philosopher Francis Bacon said, "The wise man will make more opportunities than he finds." Reflection allows us to become the active architects of our own minds, not just passive consumers of whatever the world throws at us. On a collective level, institutional design is our shield. Our systems can be intentionally structured to fight back against bias, deception, and incompetence. Here too, 3 pillars are essential. First, we need robust accountability mechanisms, structures that act as mirrors in the halls of power, delivering honest feedback no matter how charming or powerful a leader is. The Boeing 737 MAX crisis is a tragic lesson in what happens when engineers' concerns are silenced in the pursuit of profit. Accountability was absent, and the consequences were devastating. Second, institutions must champion cognitive diversity. Bringing different perspectives and thinking styles to the table isn't just a social nicety, it's a strategic imperative. Diverse teams are empirically better at solving complex problems because they challenge each other's assumptions and eliminate the blind spots that homogeneous groups inevitably develop. Third, we must demand and enforce radical transparency. These are the rules that prevent complexity from becoming a shield for incompetence. Sunshine laws in government or conflict of interest disclosures in finance make it much harder for failure to hide in the shadows of jargon and secrecy. Education is the thread that ties all of this together. It is not enough to teach skills. We must cultivate critical thinking and ethical reasoning. The great civilizations have always known this. Athens had its academy, and Florence had its humanists. They didn't just train workers, they cultivated wisdom. So, ask yourself, in your own community, your own workplace, which of these defenses are strong? Which are missing? And if we could redesign our systems to prize competence, humility, and truth above all else, what kind of world could we build? As we draw this journey to a close, we return to the man who began it all. What would Niccolò Machiavelli think of our modern world? For 500 years, Machiavelli has been painted as a devil, a teacher of evil. But that's a profound misunderstanding. He wasn't advocating for the dark patterns he described. He was exposing them. He was a political diagnostician, holding up a mirror to power. He believed that only by understanding how the game is actually played, not how we wish it were played, could we ever hope to build something better. He left us with a powerful reminder. It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles. Authority itself is meaningless. Power must be earned through its worthy and honorable use. The intersection of Machiavellian realism and modern psychology reveals a set of uncomfortable truths about us and our societies. But it is precisely these uncomfortable truths that we need to confront if we are to build a better future. The path forward is not to pretend these dark dynamics don't exist. It is to understand them so completely that we can rise above them. It's to design systems that account for our human frailties instead of allowing them to be exploited. And it's to develop the personal fortitude to resist manipulation. Most importantly, it's about recognizing that while incompetence may frequently win the battle for power, it is intelligence, fused with moral courage, that will ultimately win the war for a world where merit truly matters. What have you witnessed in your own life? Where have you seen these patterns play out? Share your stories in the comments below. And if this exploration gave you value, help our community grow by subscribing to Philosophy Bite and sharing this video with others who are trying to make sense of our complex world. Until next time, remember, understanding the darkness isn't surrendering to it. It's how we learn to create the light.